Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. When a mentally strong woman faces toxicity, she doesn't fight for attention, she commands it through silence. She doesn't chase respect, she embodies it. You can't manipulate her, guilt her, or break her because she's learned that peace isn't given, it's earned. And when she walks away, she doesn't leave quietly. She leaves behind a silence so powerful it exposes every lie that tried to destroy her. When a mentally strong woman walks into a room, you can feel it before she even speaks. It's not her posture, not her voice, not even her presence. It's her energy. It's calm, steady, and unshakable. You can sense that this is someone who has been tested by life and refused to break. Someone who's learned that peace is not a gift. It's a discipline. When toxic people come her way, she doesn't crumble, react, or explode. She doesn't waste her breath trying to prove herself because she already knows who she is. And when you know who you are, nobody's words, opinions, or manipulations can shake that foundation. The first thing she does when she encounters toxicity is simple. She observes. She doesn't engage in the chaos, she watches it. Because strength is not found in reaction, it's found in restraint. She listens carefully, not to respond, but to understand the game being played. She recognizes the manipulation tactics, guilt-tripping, gaslighting, passive aggression. She sees them all, but she doesn't take the bait. Toxic people feed off emotional responses. They want to see you flinch, get angry, defend yourself, or explain your worth. A mentally strong woman denies them that satisfaction. She gives silence when they want drama. She gives boundaries when they want control. And that silence is louder than any argument she could ever make. You see, mentally strong women have learned through experience that not everyone deserves access to their emotions. Not everyone has earned the right to know what's going on inside their minds. Toxic people thrive on proximity. They need to be close to you to influence you. But a strong woman understands that distance is power. When she senses manipulation, she creates emotional space. That space becomes her fortress. She doesn't chase closure because she's learned that closure doesn't come from toxic people. It comes from self-respect. She doesn't explain her boundaries to those who have already shown they don't care about them. She doesn't justify her decisions to those who twist her words. She understands that explaining yourself to the wrong person is like pouring wisdom into a cup with holes. It'll never stay. Instead, she saves her energy for things that matter. Her focus shifts inward, not outward. She asks herself, what can I control right now? Because that's where real power lives, in control of self, not others. She can't control how toxic people act, but she can control her reaction, her peace, and her mindset. That's what keeps her strong. A mentally strong woman knows that reacting emotionally gives away her power. The moment she starts explaining herself, defending herself, or trying to convince someone toxic to see her worth, she's already playing their game. And toxic people are masters at their game. They twist, they spin, they confuse. So instead of playing, she walks off the board. Detachment is her superpower. It's not that she doesn't care, it's that she refuses to care at the cost of herself. She knows when to walk away, and she's not afraid to do it alone. Because solitude doesn't scare her. Noise does. Chaos does. People who drain her peace do. You'll never see her begging for understanding or validation. She doesn't need an apology to move on. She doesn't need someone to admit they were wrong. Her validation comes from the quiet confidence that she handled herself with dignity, that she kept her integrity intact while others lost theirs. Toxic people often mistake kindness for weakness, but a strong woman's kindness has boundaries. She can be compassionate without being a doormat. She can forgive without forgetting. Forgiveness, for her, isn't about letting someone back in. It's about releasing herself from the emotional grip of resentment. She forgives so she can stay light, not because they deserve it. She's also learned the power of emotional neutrality. Toxic people thrive on extremes. They want you either adoring them or hating them. Neutrality starves them. A calm face, a composed tone, and a grounded energy, they can't manipulate that. That's why she keeps her emotions centered. She's aware that whoever controls her emotions controls her. She knows the value of her energy. She knows that time spent arguing with a toxic person is time stolen from her purpose. So she invests her emotional energy wisely. She pours it into growth, learning, peace, and people who genuinely care. Her focus is always on building, never on reacting. She also doesn't internalize toxic behavior. When someone treats her badly, she doesn't think, "What's wrong with me?" She thinks, "What's wrong with them that they think this is acceptable?" That's the mindset shift that protects her self-worth. She's no longer available for relationships that make her question her value. When faced with toxicity, she moves with clarity. She doesn't match low energy with low energy. She rises above it, not to feel superior, but because she refuses to live in the mud. She knows her peace costs too much to trade for temporary validation. And she's not naive. She knows that walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's strength disguised as silence, because sometimes the strongest thing you can say is nothing at all. Sometimes power looks like deleting the message, blocking the number, or refusing to engage in a pointless debate. Mentally strong women don't need to announce that they're strong. They show it in how they carry themselves when provoked. They show it in how they respond when disrespected. They show it in how they maintain grace under pressure. They have mastered the art of self-regulation. They take a deep breath before reacting. They know that emotions are temporary, but consequences are no. They're not perfect. They feel anger, disappointment, hurt, but they don't let those emotions dictate their actions. They process them privately, not publicly. When people try to undermine them, they don't seek revenge. They let time do its work. They understand that toxic people eventually expose themselves. They don't rush justice. They trust it. They know that peace and karma are patient allies. In every confrontation, a mentally strong woman asks one question: is this worth my energy? Most of the time, the answer is no. And that's how she wins, by choosing her battles wisely. She's also grounded in her values. She doesn't compromise them to fit in or be liked. She knows that the price of pleasing everyone is losing yourself, and she's not willing to make that trade. Toxic people want you to doubt yourself. They want you to question your reality, your worth, your strength. But she doesn't need their approval. She's anchored in her own truth. She's walked through fire and came out with clarity. And once you've faced that kind of heat, no one's manipulation can burn you again. A mentally strong woman understands that protecting her peace isn't selfish. It's survival. She chooses peace every time, not because it's easy, but because it's sacred. She's powerful because she knows that not everything deserves a reaction. The loudest one in the room isn't the strongest. The one who stays composed when everything around them is falling apart is. Her calmness isn't weakness. It's control. It's the product of years spent learning that reacting to everything steals your peace, while choosing silence protects it. She understands that being mentally strong doesn't mean she never feels pain or anger. It means she knows how to manage them. She doesn't suppress her emotions, she channels them. When someone tries to break her down, she uses that as fuel to build herself higher. She knows that pain, when processed correctly, becomes power. Every insult, every betrayal, every manipulation she's faced, she's turned it all into wisdom. When toxic people try to guilt her into submission, she doesn't flinch. She recognizes emotional manipulation for what it is, an attempt to control her behavior through shame. She doesn't let guilt decide her choices. Her boundaries are firm, and she's unapologetic about them. She understands that saying no isn't cruelty, it's clarity. She doesn't explain her boundaries to those who have already shown they will cross them. When she walks away from toxicity, she doesn't carry bitterness with her. She carries lessons. She's learned that some people will never take responsibility for their behavior because accountability threatens their control. She doesn't waste energy waiting for them to change. She accepts that she can't heal people who refuse to acknowledge their own wounds. She leaves them where they are and focuses on her own evolution. She doesn't view walking away as losing. She views it as reclaiming her freedom, freedom from mind games, from emotional chaos, from the endless cycle of proving and defending herself. Her self-worth is no longer up for negotiation. Once she realizes that, there's no going back. When she encounters toxicity, she no longer asks, "Why are they doing this to me?" Instead, she asks, "What are they revealing about themselves?" That shift keeps her grounded in truth. She doesn't internalize other people's dysfunctions. She recognizes that the way someone treats her is a reflection of their own unresolved pain, not her value. And when someone tries to provoke her, she doesn't feed the fire. She's learned that some people start conflicts not because they're right, but because they crave chaos. She denies them that satisfaction. Her emotional discipline is her armor. She stays calm, centered, and detached because she knows that reacting emotionally gives toxic people control. Her confidence is quiet, not loud. It's in the way she holds herself, in the way she chooses peace over argument, in the way she knows when to speak and when to walk away. She's not interested in winning every argument. She's interested in maintaining her inner stability. That's what real power looks like, responding with wisdom instead of ego. She doesn't get caught up in other people's drama because she's too focused on her purpose. Toxic people are distractions, and she's disciplined enough to recognize that. She protects her mental space like a fortress because she knows that what she allows in her mind shapes her entire life. When she senses toxicity, she doesn't rush to react. She pauses. That pause is her power. In that stillness, she gathers her thoughts, reclaims her control, and reminds herself that she's not obligated to absorb anyone's negativity. She's allowed to choose peace even when provoked. She's allowed to choose silence even when misunderstood. She's not afraid of being misunderstood because she's not living for external validation anymore. She's learned that people will twist your intentions, criticize your strength, and resent your boundaries, but none of that defines you. She's defined by her values, not by other people's opinions. She knows that self-control is a form of self-respect. Every time she refuses to react, she's telling herself, I choose me. And that's what mentally strong women do. They choose themselves, not out of selfishness, but out of survival. Because giving your power away to toxic people is like handing them the remote control to your peace. She refuses to do that. Even in moments when she feels hurt or disappointed, she doesn't let those emotions dictate her decisions. She allows herself to feel them privately, process them fully, and then release them. She's not interested in holding grudges, she's interested in holding peace. She's also mastered emotional detachment, not coldness, but clarity. She can love deeply and still walk away when love turns toxic. She can care about someone and still set limits when they cross her boundaries. Detachment doesn't mean she stops feeling. It means she refuses to let her feelings destroy her sense of self. She has a quiet confidence that makes toxic people uncomfortable. They can't control her because she's not driven by approval. She doesn't seek permission to be who she is. She's learned to validate herself, to stand firm in her truth even when it's unpopular. She doesn't chase anyone's attention because she knows that genuine connections don't require chasing. They flow naturally. If someone wants to misunderstand her, she lets them. If someone disrespects her, she withdraws her energy. She doesn't demand respect, she embodies it. Her boundaries are not walls, they're filters. They don't block people out, they keep her peace protected. She's selective about who she gives her time to because she understands that energy is currency. Every conversation, every relationship, every interaction, it all has an emotional cost, and she invests wisely. She's not afraid to be alone because solitude has taught her what real strength feels like. Alone, she's learned to self-soothe, to think clearly, to reset her energy. Alone, she's found peace that no one can take from her. So when toxic people threaten her with abandonment, she doesn't beg them to stay. She opens the door wider. Her silence speaks volumes. She's learned that you don't have to defend your truth when you live it. She's learned that. Not responding is sometimes the most powerful response of all. People who thrive on drama can't survive in silence. It exposes their own noise. She's wise enough to recognize that toxicity isn't always loud. Sometimes it's subtle. A backhanded compliment, a guilt trip disguised as care, a manipulation hidden behind affection. But she sees through it. Her intuition has become her best weapon. She trusts it because it's been sharpened by experience. She doesn't argue with lies. She lets time reveal the truth. She doesn't fight for space in people's lives who take her presence for granted. She removes herself gracefully. That grace isn't weakness. It's the highest form of strength, because it takes immense power to stay kind in a world that constantly tests your patience. When faced with disrespect, she doesn't mirror it. She rises above it. She knows that responding to hate with hate only multiplies it. So instead, she responds with composure, not for them, but for herself, because she refuses to let anyone drag her down to their level. She's learned to take her time before reacting, to think before speaking, to breathe before deciding. Because mentally strong women don't rush into emotional chaos, they move with intention. Every choice she makes is guided by one question. Will this bring me peace? If the answer is no, she walks away without hesitation. She doesn't compete with toxic people, she outgrows them. While they're trying to pull her into conflict, she's elevating, she's focused on growth, not gossip, on progress, not pettiness, on healing, not hurting. That's what separates her. And even when the world misunderstands her silence or calls her distant, she doesn't explain herself. She knows that peace often looks like indifference to those addicted to drama, but she's not living for their understanding. She's living for her inner peace. Her strength doesn't come from never being broken. It comes from being broken and rebuilding herself stronger each time. She's faced betrayal, criticism, manipulation, and loss. But she turned every experience into armor. Not armor that hardens her heart, but armor that protects her spirit. When toxic people try to control the narrative, she no longer participates in their stories. She writes her own. She's no longer interested in being the hero or the victim in someone else's drama. She's the author of her peace, and that's what makes her unstoppable. Not her perfection, but her persistence. Every time someone tried to tear her down, she built herself back up with more self-respect, more clarity, more boundaries. She doesn't need to prove her strength anymore. She is her strength. And when she stands alone, centered and calm, she's not thinking about revenge, approval, or validation. She's thinking about peace, because she's learned that nothing, no relationship, no apology, no explanation, is worth sacrificing her peace again. She knows that real strength is not about how much you can endure, but how much you refuse to tolerate. There's a difference between patience and permission, and she's mastered that difference. She doesn't wait for people to stop disrespecting her. She decides she's done accepting it. That decision doesn't come from anger, it comes from self-respect. She's learned that protecting her peace sometimes means disappointing others, and she's finally okay with that. The woman she used to be would have tried to explain herself, tried to fix what she didn't break, tried to make others see her heart. But the woman she's become knows that explanations rarely change closed minds. So she no longer wastes her breath convincing anyone of her worth. She simply shows it in how she carries herself. Her silence, her absence, and her boundaries all speak louder than words ever could. She's not unkind, she's just no longer available for chaos. She's not bitter, she's just no longer available for disrespect. She's not emotionless. She's just selective about who gets to experience her emotions. Her heart is still soft, but her boundaries are steel. That's what happens when you've been tested by toxicity and learned that not everyone who smiles at you has good intentions. When toxic people try to re-enter her life, she doesn't need to argue or explain why she's not the same. They feel the difference the moment she no longer reacts. They sense the power in her calmness, the distance in her silence, the finality in her boundaries. It unsettles them because they've lost control. They can't manipulate what doesn't need their approval anymore. She's no longer playing emotional tug-of-war with people who thrive on drama. When they pull, she lets go. That's her secret. She doesn't fight for peace. She releases what disturbs it. And that release is where her freedom lives. She knows that some people will never meet her at her level of awareness, and that's okay. She no longer lowers herself just to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding her. Her strength shows in small moments. The pause before replying to provocation, the quiet exit from a toxic room, the decision to remain calm when she could easily destroy with her words. That's the discipline of emotional intelligence. She's learned that not everything deserves her energy, and not every battle deserves to be fought. Her peace has become too sacred to gamble with. She's aware that toxic people often disguise their manipulation as care. They'll tell her she's too cold, too distant, too strong, but she sees those words for what they are. Attempts to guilt her back into submission. The truth is, she's not too anything. She's finally enough for herself. She doesn't need to prove her warmth to people who only value her when she's weak. She's also stopped romanticizing potential. She no longer holds on to people hoping they'll change. She understands that potential without accountability is just a fantasy. Toxic people promise growth to keep you attached, but a mentally strong woman looks at patterns, not promises. If someone's words and actions don't align, she believes the actions. Her clarity protects her from being fooled twice. When she senses emotional manipulation, she grounds herself in logic. She reminds herself that feelings are valid, but not always facts. Toxic people are skilled at twisting emotions into confusion, but she stays anchored in what she knows to be true. Her intuition has been tested enough times to trust it fully. She no longer doubts that quiet voice inside her. It's the compass that's led her out of every dark place she's ever been. She's learned that boundaries are not about keeping people out, they're about keeping herself intact. She enforces them not because she wants control, but because she deserves respect. And when someone can't respect those boundaries, she doesn't negotiate. She separates. She's not afraid of losing people who never truly valued her. What she fears now is losing herself again, trying to keep them. Her strength isn't loud or performative. It's the kind that moves in silence, that chooses dignity over drama and peace over pride. She doesn't need to announce her decisions. She simply acts on them. People notice the change when she stops explaining and starts walking. She understands that distance doesn't always mean dislike. Sometimes it means healing. Sometimes it means she's choosing to breathe again after being suffocated by someone else's negativity. Distance gives her perspective. It allows her to see who really adds to her life and who only drains it. When she lets go of someone toxic, she doesn't rush to fill the empty space. She allows the silence to teach her. She allows solitude to rebuild her. She knows that healing isn't about replacing people. It's about returning to yourself. And every time she chooses herself, she grows stronger. There's a calmness about her now, a quiet confidence that unsettles those who once fed on her insecurities. She's no longer easily provoked, no longer easily controlled. Toxic people sense it and try harder, but the more they push, the less access they have. They can't manipulate peace. It's untouchable. She's learned to stop expecting fairness from people who lack integrity. She no longer waits for closure, apologies, or acknowledgement. She closes the door herself. Her peace no longer depends on what others do. It depends on what she allows. And she allows nothing that threatens her mental stability. Even when she forgives, she does it for her own liberation, not to restore connection. Forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It means freedom. It's her way of saying, "You no longer have power over me." She releases resentment because it's too heavy to carry into the future she's building. She's intentional now. Every decision she makes comes from awareness, not impulse. Every word she speaks is measured, not emotional. Every relationship she invests in is mutual, not one-sided. She's learned that giving endlessly to people who only take is not love. It's self-abandonment. And she refuses to abandon herself again. She's built too much peace, too much clarity, too much strength to go back to who she was. The woman she used to be was reactive, over-explaining, and emotionally exhausted. The woman she is now is grounded, discerning, and at ease. She doesn't just survive toxicity anymore. She rises above it. She's also aware that growth can be lonely, that the higher she climbs, the fewer people can come with her. But she accepts that loneliness is sometimes the price of peace. She'd rather stand alone in truth than surrounded by people who thrive on deceit. Solitude no longer feels like isolation. It feels like safety. Her presence now commands respect without demanding it. People treat her differently because she treats herself differently. She's stopped teaching others how to love her by tolerating what hurts her. She's rewritten the script, and now her life reflects her standards. She's no longer available for conversations that drain her, environments that unsettle her, or relationships that confuse her. Clarity is her new peace, and boundaries are her new language. She's not trying to be understood. She's focused on understanding herself. She knows that some people will call her detached, distant, or difficult because she no longer serves their comfort, but she's fine with being misunderstood by people who never took the time to truly see her. Her goal isn't to be liked, it's to be free. And when toxic people realize they no longer have access to her emotions, they'll try to guilt her with phrases like, "You've changed." She'll smile quietly because they're right. She has changed. She's evolved. She's grown beyond manipulation, beyond guilt, beyond fear. What they call change, she calls healing. She's aware that maintaining strength is a daily choice. Some days it's easy to stay composed. Other days it takes everything she has. But she shows up anyway, with grace, discipline, and resolve. Because she knows that strength isn't something you have, it's something you practice. And every time she chooses not to engage with toxicity, every time she chooses peace over pride, every time she walks away instead of reacting, she's reinforcing that strength. She's building a life where peace isn't conditional. It's her foundation. She's not afraid of people leaving anymore. She's afraid of losing her peace trying to keep the wrong ones. She's seen what happens when she lowers her standards for others, and she refuses to go back. Her self-worth is no longer negotiable. It's non-refundable. And that's the quiet revolution of her strength. She no longer needs to shout to prove it. She simply is. She embodies it in every calm breath, every deliberate silence, every firm boundary. She's not just surviving the presence of toxic people, she's thriving despite them. Every decision she makes now comes from alignment, not fear. She no longer acts out of obligation or pressure, she acts out of clarity. She's done pleasing everyone at the expense of her own peace. When something doesn't feel right, she trusts that feeling. That inner voice, once silenced by doubt, now guides her like a compass through every situation. She's learned that intuition doesn't shout, it whispers. And when you've been through enough chaos, you learn to listen to the whispers. She no longer lives in reaction mode. She doesn't let other people's moods dictate her own. Whether someone tries to provoke her or ignore her, she remains steady. That steadiness didn't come naturally. It was built, moment by moment, through the discipline of not letting emotions hijack her decisions. Toxic people thrive on unpredictability, but she thrives on control of self, of reaction, of focus. She's not interested in proving that she's strong. She's interested in preserving her energy. She's realized that arguing with someone committed to misunderstanding you is like wrestling with smoke. You get exhausted, and nothing changes. So now, she conserves her energy for growth, for peace, for things that feed her soul. Her silence is not avoidance, it's strategy. Because silence is not weakness, it's wisdom applied. She knows that some people can't stand silence because it forces them to face their own behavior. Toxic people crave noise. Chaos distracts them from accountability, but she doesn't play into that anymore. When they try to provoke her, she lets the silence do the talking. It unsettles them more than any confrontation ever could. Her stillness is unsettling to those who feed off attention because it starves their ego. She has learned to become emotionally self-sufficient. She doesn't rely on validation, reassurance, or constant affirmation to feel secure. Her sense of worth is internal now. It's not up for debate. When she looks in the mirror, she doesn't see someone who needs fixing. She sees someone who's been refined. Every scar, every heartbreak, every disappointment, it's all evidence of survival. And survival for her is not just existing, it's evolving. She knows that every interaction is an energy exchange, so before she speaks, before she engages, before she gives her time, she asks, "Is this worth my energy?" That question has become her shield. It protects her from draining conversations, unnecessary arguments, and manipulative dynamics. She understands that protecting her peace isn't arrogance, it's maturity. Because peace isn't found, it's built through 1,000 quiet choices to not get dragged into what doesn't serve you. When she enters a toxic environment, she doesn't shrink or adapt, she observes. Observation gives her power. She studies patterns, motives, tones, and unspoken cues. She doesn't get lost in the noise. She listens beneath it. Toxic people reveal themselves not through what they say, but through how they act when they can't control you. She watches that carefully, and she adjusts accordingly. She knows that strength isn't about being unbothered, it's about managing what bothers you. There are moments when words sting, when manipulation cuts deep, when betrayal hurts. But she doesn't let those emotions control her narrative. She acknowledges the pain, processes it, and then releases it. That's her ritual. Feel, understand, let go. It's what keeps her light in a heavy world. When people try to twist her story or paint her as the villain, she doesn't fight to correct them. She's learned that truth doesn't need defense. It reveals itself over time. She stays silent not because she's weak, but because she's wise enough to know that engaging only fuels the drama. Her silence is her boundary. It's the space between her peace and their chaos. She's stopped trying to be the bigger person in the way that means tolerating mistreatment. Being the bigger person doesn't mean accepting disrespect with grace. It means refusing to lower yourself to match someone's dysfunction. Her version of grace is calm detachment, not blind endurance. She can wish someone well and still never allow them near her again. That's not cruelty, that's clarity. When she faces toxicity, she no longer reacts with emotion, she responds with awareness. Awareness that not everything deserves her attention. Awareness that her mental health comes before anyone's approval. Awareness that her energy is sacred. This awareness is her armor. It keeps her centered when others try to pull her off balance. She's mastered the art of emotional minimalism. She gives only what's necessary and withholds what's sacred. Not everyone deserves access to her vulnerability. Her peace is private, her healing is quiet, her power is internal. She no longer needs to broadcast her strength. It's evident in how she moves, how she speaks, how she chooses. Toxic people often mistake her detachment for indifference, but it's not that she doesn't care. It's that she cares too much about her own peace to keep letting others disturb it. She knows that empathy without boundary becomes self-destruction. So she's learned to balance compassion with self-protection. She can understand someone's pain without allowing it to poison her. There was a time when she took everything personally, when every slight felt like an attack, but now she knows that people project their pain. When someone lashes out, manipulates, or criticizes her, she doesn't take it to heart. She takes it as information. She studies behavior like data, not drama. That emotional detachment keeps her free. She's not afraid to walk away mid-sentence, mid-relationship, mid-history, because staying where peace is lost isn't loyalty, it's self-betrayal. She's no longer loyal to dysfunction. Her loyalty is to peace, to truth, to her own growth. And that loyalty has cost her people, but it's also saved her soul. She's discovered the strength in not responding. She understands that when someone tries to provoke her, their power exists only in her reaction. By not reacting, she reclaims that power instantly. She's no longer dancing to the rhythm of other people's emotions. She moves to her own tempo now. That rhythm is steady, deliberate, untouchable. She's not looking to win arguments. She's looking to win her inner peace. Toxic people measure success by how much they can upset you. She measures success by how much she can stay calm. And every time she stays composed in the face of manipulation, she wins quietly. Her strength has made her unrecognizable to those who once thrived on her softness. The woman who once over-explained now says nothing. The woman who once begged to be understood now shrugs and walks away. The woman who once accepted crumbs of respect now demands the whole loaf or nothing at all. That evolution confuses those who benefited from her old self, but she doesn't explain it. She embodies it. She knows that healing isn't a straight line. Some days she feels the pull of old habits, the urge to explain, to justify, to fix, but she catches herself. Awareness stops the cycle. She reminds herself that peace is built through discipline, not perfection. She doesn't need to get it right every time. She just needs to keep choosing herself. And when toxic people try to reappear, disguising themselves as changed, she doesn't fall for words anymore. She watches consistency. Change for her is proven through time, not promises. She's patient enough to wait and wise enough to walk away when the patterns repeat. Her resilience is quiet but unwavering. She's faced betrayal, judgment, and emotional manipulation, and yet she stands with her dignity intact. She doesn't wear her pain as a story of victimhood. She wears it as armor of awareness. Every experience taught her something: who she is, what she values, and what she'll never tolerate again. She's learned that peace is not passive, it's active work. It's waking up every day and deciding not to entertain negativity. It's catching her thoughts before they spiral. It's refusing to match someone's chaos with chaos. It's the discipline of emotional control. And that discipline is what separates her from those who thrive on dysfunction. When she looks back, she no longer feels anger for those who hurt her. She feels gratitude for showing her what not to accept, for forcing her to grow, for teaching her what real strength feels like. Toxic people were her greatest teachers, not because they were right, but because they showed her how to stand tall in her truth. Now, she walks through life differently. She's light but grounded, kind but firm, compassionate but cautious. She knows her peace is her power, and she guards it fiercely. People feel her presence not because she's loud, but because she's aligned. Her silence commands attention, her calmness commands respect, and her energy commands boundaries. And though the world around her may still test her patience, provoke her emotions, and challenge her peace, she no longer wavers. Because she's built some thing inside that no toxic person can touch, a fortress of awareness, strength, and serenity.